Okay, hello everybody. So Melanie, I think we can start.
Good morning. Yes, so my name is Melanie Moreno. I'm the product manager of ID verification. And Cyril, I'll let you introduce yourself as well before we start.
Yeah, I'm Cyril Chaillon. I'm the director of engineering for the identity product.
Perfect. So let's get started. So we all sign things every day, and we typically sign with the same signature, whether we are signing our restaurant bill or a home loan agreement for thousands of dollars. But you can't just sign a home loan agreement and be approved. You need to provide additional documentation to prove it's really you. That's why for important agreements, you are typically asked, "Can I see your ID?" This identification procedure is what enables somebody to trust you when the stakes are high. Organizations identify a customer not only to protect themselves against fraud, but also to comply with regulations. Sensitive, high-value agreements move online and are completed digitally. Validating the identity of your customers and partners is even more important, but also more challenging. And it's not enough just verify a signer's identity. You also need to retain proof that you've done so. So today is about making sure you have the right tools in place to help you mitigate legal risk and easily capture evidence of the verification process for all your agreements. DocuSign ID verification takes away all the complexity and provide a way to automate the entire transaction so constituents can enjoy a frictionless experience. This alleviates the burden of having to know how IDs worked in every country. And our product is therefore supporting passports, driver licenses, but also electronic IDs and smart card. And one of the most common questions we hear from customers is if they can save the information from a verified ID for their own compliance reasons. Our customers are able to securely store and access information about the ID, and if required, capture and store a copy of the ID itself, supporting their compliance efforts. Of course, customers have the choice about what evidence they want to store and don't have to store anything if they don't need to. And with that, I will now pass it on to Cyril for a live coding session of the end-to-end journey to retain the proof of recipient ID.
Okay, thank you, Melanie, for the introduction. I will share my screen. So let's dive into it. As you can see, I'm connected to my DocSign account, as you all know, on demo. And the first thing I would have to do is configure my identity verification platform. So I'm going under the settings, so to go under the admin part of DocuSign. And here I will have an identity verification tile on the left side, which is here because I have the feature enabled on my account. If you don't have it already, that might be because you don't have the feature, and so you can talk to your account manager or someone like that at DocSign to enable it for you. So I have some workflows, one workflow configured by default, and I will actually create a new one just to show you all the settings we have and what are the capability of the product. So I will have to select a name, workflow, and a description, my verification settings. And the first element that you will have to configure is the verification method. In my case, I only have one, which is DocSign ID verification, but depending on the configuration of your account, you could have several, like SMS authentication, phone authentication. In my case, I have only one, so I don't have any drop-down, but otherwise, this is how you would select it. The second setting is the number of attempts that you want to allow for your signer. By default, it's 4. For this demo, we will use only 2. That's enough, but this is how many times a signer will have the ability to go through the process. Then the issuing countries and region. So when we ask a recipient to identify themselves, to identify their identity, they have to prove their identity with something that is issued by a real country. And in these settings, you can select which country you want to allow or not. So if I go under the full list of country, you could see that, for example, for each country, you could select, for example, here we have everything selected, but you could say for United States, for example, I only want to allow photo ID, or I only want to allow passport, for example. Electronic ID, EID, or digital identity, which is issued by a trusted entity, like a government or a bank. So that's something we can leverage with DocSign ID verification, because you already have a digital identity somewhere, so we can leverage it here. The smart card is it's similar. It's when you have a digital identity on a smart card, same thing. Some countries have that, and we can leverage it as well. So here again, we will just keep everything to make it simple. The next setting is the name acceptance. So when you're sending an envelope to someone as a sender, you will specify a name and an email address. And to make sure that's the right person who is opening the envelope, we will try to match the name that has been provided by the sender with the name that we can extract from the ID. And we will try to match those two names. There is some variation that we can allow or not. And you have a link here that gives more detail about what is accepted, what is not accepted. So if you have some issue with that, feel free to click on this link to learn more about it. Next things are the settings specific to a specific type of ID. So for photo ID and passport. When the recipient reaches the maximum number of attempts, by default, we are locking the envelope, meaning you won't be able to try again to make sure he is not trying over and over again. And the only way to unblock the recipient is for the sender to correct, resend the envelope, or do an action on the envelope. Alternatively, you can also leverage manual review. In this case, if the user reached the maximum number of attempts, the sender will be able to himself manually review the ID and accept or reject the ID. Also, when you're leveraging manual review, you can say that you also want to accept ID from unsupported countries. So we have a list of supported countries that we've seen at the beginning, and we don't have all the countries of the world. So if you have a recipient from a country which is outside of these, you can check this box and we will also accept them. And if it fails our automatic verification, you will have to manually review the ID. We will keep it simple again and stick to log the envelope. Next thing is, what are you allowing in terms of capture of ID? Do you allow file upload or not? Same thing, I will keep the basic one. And this is really the interesting part for us. By default, we are only logging non-PII, so non-private information into our system. But you can opt in on your side for more data. And this is what those checkboxes are here for. So for example, I could say, I want to log the last names and let's say the issuance and expiration data as well. And finally, also the copy of the ID, because I want to keep a track of that. And you will see later in the API call, how does that look like. Then when are you asking the recipient to identify? By default, it's every access. Every time they need to access an envelope, they will have to identify again. But you could say that once the signer sign, they don't have to identify anymore. That's only before they signed. Or it could simply be once, meaning they only have to do it once, and once it's done, they don't have to do it again. I will keep it to every access, but just for you to know that you have all these settings. And after that, for the EID and smart card, you have also different type of things that you could log, but the most important here would be the photo ID and passport. Finally, the signature type, I won't cover it here, but you have a link here again if you want to know more about it. So I have my workflow. I will create it, and that's the one. So once I created my workflow, I have a workflow ID that I will be able to use, and I will show you how to send an envelope using this new settings that we've done. For that, I will leverage our API request builder that we recently released, and there is actually a session about it tomorrow, I think. So if you want to know more about this tool, please feel free to go to this session. And these tools provide some handy placeholder that we already have everything we need. So we have this one, which leverage the ID verification feature. So it's a helper to build simply build the API request. So I will put my workflow ID here. I have to set up my email address and my name. I will make a mistake on purpose. I'm removing the embedded signing ceremony here because that's not the point of this session. So I'm removing the two settings for embedded signing. And you can see that on the right side, I have my code generated. So I choose C# and I have my code in C#. So I already downloaded the framework example, which is a simple solution with all everything I need to set up how to say that. I mean, I basically have, the SDK configured and everything. So everything is ready. Again, I will just delete the recipient view. And so I will delete it here as well. I just need to change that because I'm on a Mac. Okay. Okay. So I have everything. I have my code ready. We can see that we have my workflow ID configured here, and we have my workflow ID configured for my signer. So let's try it out actually, and let's send an envelope with ID verification. So it's building, and hopefully everything will work. Sending the envelope. Okay, here we go. So here I have my envelope ID that has been sent. So I will keep it here because I won't send several envelopes. I will again keep it simple. But I have my envelope ID now. And if I go to my email inbox, I actually have it here. So we are good. So now what we will do is using the API call to get what we call ID evidence, which is actually the proof containing all the data for ID. So right now it's empty, but we will build the integration and we will see that we will have some data in it after. So the first step is obtain the auth token. That's already done because I sent the envelope. So that's done. And let's move to step 2. Step 2 is getting your recipient ID. Good. So we will create one profile per recipient. That's why you need to create one. You need to call the API every time for every recipient, and you can choose for which recipient. So get recipient ID. I will need the envelope ID. Okay. So here I will take back a couple of things. So I'm taking this and I want the list of recipients. So if I'm going to the envelope API, I can list the recipients. So I need the account ID and the envelope ID. And this should give me the list of recipients. In my case, that's a list, but I only have one. I know it. So I only have one signer. So I'm taking the first signer. And I need his recipient ID grid. So with that, I can write it down. Recipient ID. Okay. Recipient ID. Okay, here we go. So again, let's try it out. Just need to call string recipient ID, get recipient ID, and I need to pass in the envelope ID. So with that, I should have the recipient ID now. So that's a pretty standard e-signature API. And here we can see that I now have the recipient ID. So again, I will go step by step. So I will copy that here and move on to the next step. So this was step 2. And let's move to step 3, which is get ID evidence. And here we will need the envelope ID and the recipient ID. Recipient ID. Okay. We'll do a simple one. So the step 3, again, I'm following the guide. Step 3 is obtaining a resource token. So in this step, we will call the REST API again to get a resource token that we will be able to use after for calling actually the proof API. So we have the query listed here. That's why we need the account ID, envelope ID, and recipient ID. So what we need to do, again, I will simply duplicate it to make it less, make it more easier to understand. But I want a proof service resource link. Proof resource link. Okay, and I will call the envelope ID, envelope API dot profile resource token. I need, so the token scope, I won't put anything here. Just want a simple one. I need the account ID, the envelope ID, and the recipient ID. And in response, this is actually giving me 2 interesting objects. This is first giving me the base URL, because after that, we will have to call a different API. So that's why I will have the proof. I'm having the proof base URL, and that depends on the region. So this will give you the right region. You know, DocuSign is located in several regions. You have North America, Europe, Canada, etc. And this API will give you which region you have to call to query your proof service. So if I'm doing that, I should have the base URL and the resource token. I will directly do the step 4, which is, now that I have everything, I will construct my API header to make then an API call. So I will simply use an HTTP client. Again, that's really C#, but works in any language, and you can leverage our SDK for all the languages. So in the step 4, what the first step you have to do is to actually add this authorization header and use the resource token that you got from the previous call. So I will use this resource token here. And this is how you're authenticated against the proof service. This resource token is valid for 2 minutes. So you will have to chain up your call. And yeah, it has to be in sequence. Otherwise, you have to ask for a new proof token once the first one is expired. So that's why I'm chaining all the call here. Proof content, I think. So let's ask for a string. Again, I will keep it simple. Proof link. So base URI. Then we can see in the documentation here that I need to use the proof base path, and then I just need to add this content to it. That's because the service is generic and it can query actually several types of events, but here we are talking about someone, a person. So that's why I'm querying person here. And then I need the recipient's ID. So in this, if I do proof result. So if I'm doing that, I should have the result. Same thing, we will just log that in here. And so proof content. Okay, I will proof content. Okay. So now I just need to call my get ID evidence with my envelope ID and my recipient ID. And I think I haven't forgot anything, so we should be good to go now. Okay, so here we go. So we have something that has been returned. Let me display it in something a little bit nicer. Okay, so that's what has been returned to us. So we can see we have already one event, which is the fact that an envelope has been sent, and we have sent by who and to whom. So we already have this data, but obviously we don't have anything related to the ID yet because actually nothing happened. So let's do that. Let's go over the flow and create some data for it. So I'm the recipient now. I'm clicking on the envelope. So I've been asked to verify my identity. I have an identity issued in France. So I'm selecting my passport. I won't explain all the different flow to upload your ID. I will simply use a file upload here. Go. So my passport is blurry. That's on purpose. That's not the case. It's a real one. Just for the presentation, I blur my image. And so here behind the scene, we are checking the validity of the ID. We are trying to extract all the data we can from it. And we will try to match, as I said, the name that we have been able to extract from the ID with the name that has been provided by the sender. And if everything goes as planned, here we are failing because the name doesn't match. So the question is now, what do we have on the proof service side? So as you can see, I'm not changing anything to the code. I'm just running the same code again. And we will query the proof service again and see what we get. Okay, so we can see that now we have a little bit more information, and let's again display it in a bit nicer view. Okay, so here we can see that we have several entries inside this. They are not sorted, but you could sort it by creation date. So we still have the envelope sent, but what is interesting to us is the two other events. One is image sent. So this event is here because I uploaded my ID. And so as soon as the recipient upload their ID, we will track that down in this event. And because I asked to log the front of the ID and the back of the ID, I have this endpoint that I can query as well to get the actual image of the ID. I only have the front because it's a passport, so there is no back, but otherwise I would have the link for the back as well. And then we have an identity verification error because, as we've seen, the name were not matching. So why? Because the name was provided by the sender was Melanie, and my name extracted was, actually, I don't know, because I haven't selected this information. I only selected last names. So here it's a bit hard to understand because I didn't do a very good configuration. But nevertheless, I can still see that there was indeed a name mismatch error. And we have also the issuance date and the expiration date that has been extracted from this ID. To match these two events, the way to do it is using the trace ID. So the trace ID here, you can see it's the same. It's because one attempt to verify the ID matched to one trace ID. And the session ID is because someone in the same session. So if I'm going back here, you can see that I'm in this session and I can actually try again because I have two attempts. So I could try again. And in this case, if I try again, we would see that for the same session, I have different trace ID. So that's how you could understand and query your proof. A couple of things to add to that. This is by default in JSON. You could also get this in PDF. So if I do that and I select, for example, .pdf, I can also get a PDF version of it, which could be nice for storing purposes because it's better easier than JSON format. So that was a brief overview of all the settings. And everything you could do with the Proof Service API, and I'm giving back to Melanie to get you more information about what IDV could do.
Thanks a lot, Cyril. Let me share my screen. All right. Thanks Cyril for this presentation. So as Cyril was mentioning, we have some exciting features in ID verification. And I won't go through all the different features that we have, but just some of the major ones. So the first feature is manual review that Cyril briefly presented during the demo. For various reasons, the identification process can fail. As an example, if the ID is expired or the signer's name is not matching the name on the envelope. In this case, DocuSign allows senders to manually review IDs. Another feature that we wanted to expose here is helping our customers and its extended coverage. One of the settings Cyril presented as well. If you need to validate an ID method that is not fully supported by us, because sometimes we are supporting a lot of different countries and a lot of IDs, but it's always, it could be a challenge to support everything, in particular like old IDs over the world. So we are offering the possibility to automatically check those IDs. And if we can't automatically check it, the sender can manually review it. Finally, we have an exciting feature that is coming on the roadmap. So it will be available in early access at the end of October, and in GA in November. Admins can choose with this feature to add SMS re-authentication to IDV envelopes and add more security. Signers who have passed IDV will receive a one-time passcode delivered to their phone number and must enter that code before they can go back into the envelope and sign. This was just a few major features we are supporting, and we are adding a lot more exciting features to improve our products and meet our customer needs. And we'll be happy now to pass it on to questions that you may have. We hope this session was helpful for you. And we are super happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
I'm checking the questions as well.
So yeah, there was a question. It has been answered, but I think it's worth explaining a little bit more where the data are stored. So as we said, the data are located in the same region as your document and your envelope are. So we are using the same data center. And for example, the images are stored with the same process than any documents. So we are leveraging all the capability DocuSign have to securely store a document, and we are applying that to IDs basically. And one thing to note as well, the life cycle of this data is also tied to the envelope. So meaning if you delete the envelope, and purge all the content of the envelope, all this information will be purged as well. So if you purge the envelope, you will purge this type of data as well.
Do we have a new questions? Cyril, do you want to take it?
Yes. So the question is, does my application need to do something special about the security of personal information being available to me? So yes, actually, and that's why everything is opt-in. So if you remember when I shared, and actually I could share again, but everything is opt-in because, I mean, we don't know what your business requirements are, and that's why it's actually on your side and maybe your legal team to decide what is really needed to be stored on our side. And it's really depending on your business. So we can't take any decision about that. By default, as I said, we are logging all technical data that doesn't have private information in it. But if you want to store more information, please talk with your legal team to make sure that's compliant with your requirements and you're allowed to store it, especially if you want to delete it and store it somewhere. That then depend on your business rules.
I can see one attendee is typing.
Yeah, do you have any more questions, Melanie? Do you see any more questions?
Yeah, I can see one attendee is typing, but no new questions for now.
Okay. So again, to give more detail on one of the questions, so everything I've shown here are via API, but everything is also available in the UI, in the DocuSign UI. So as a sender, same thing, you can, there is a link and you can download, see the proof service and all the data in it and download the PDF as well. Everything is available to you via the UI. But here the idea was to really show the API side of things to show that you could automate all of that. And that's actually, again, to give more detail on that, that's actually the same thing for manual review. Because we discussed about it, we didn't have time in this session to present in details the manual review. But again, the fact that the sender can accept or reject the ID, that can be managed directly in the DocuSign UI, in the sender experience. But you can also integrate via API all of this experience, meaning you could query the API to get the manual review session and present it to your signer on your side. So that's also possible. You could really build everything yourself if you want to. Okay, I see there is another question about someone changing their name. So yeah, a couple of additions on that. So first of all, if the name doesn't match, you can either manually review and then you can decide on your side to accept or reject this difference. But what we are trying to do on our side, as I mentioned, we have several variation of name. And I think actually I can click here to give you more details. But we are trying to match the name with something that is present on the ID, but everything doesn't have to be present. We accept some differences. And this is why, for example, we have this table that explains this pretty well. For example, if you're sending an envelope to Anna Smith, and on the ID, there is several names, then we will match because we will simply ignore her second name and just assume that that's actually the same person. This has some limit though. So if, for example, if I go on here, for example, we won't match something that could happen as well. You're sending an envelope to Bob Doe and the ID says Robert Doe. In this case, we won't match. We won't make this choice on our own. But this is something you could potentially do with manual review, but on our side, this is not something we would match automatically, for example.
And so we have one question regarding using the functionality via UI. How will we see that on the envelope to optionally select the verification?
How we'll see that? Yeah. So let me see if I can show you one envelope. I haven't prepared that, so let me see if I actually have one envelope ready to show you. But it's you have a link basically on your. Okay, sorry. I have several accounts. I'm sure I have one with some testing envelopes. But yeah, you have a link on your on the sender. No, that's not a good one. Okay, here is one, for example. So that's a complex one. That's one with a manual review. So you can see that here I'm asked to review the ID and with the ID evidence piece. So that's why I have this view detail. And if I click on it, here you will have a UI representation of what we've seen in the JSON. So yeah, you could see what that's just a UI, yeah, HTML rendering of the JSON data. So this is how it looks like, and again, I can download the PDF of this as well. So that's how you would see it in the UI.
The person is adding more context. The person means that while sending the envelope.
So you wouldn't know. I mean, that's why it's important to correctly name the workflow for the admin. So when you send an envelope, again, I can show in the UI something I didn't mention. So let me switch back to this account. Something I haven't mentioned is you have a list of identity verification settings that we've seen in the admin. And well, you could query this list via API as well. And this is what the UI is doing. So if I'm going here under add identity verification, here I have the name of my identity verification and the description. And so that's why here it's really demonstration names, not really good name. But this is where, I mean, it's up to the administrator of the account to properly choose the name to say, let's say, I don't know, like I9 template for HR onboarding, something like that, that will tell the sender that that's the right workflow for his usage. Okay, and I think we are close to be at time. So
yes,
thank you all for attending, and I hope it has been useful. And enjoy the rest of your DEF CON today's session.
thank you so much. Have a good one.
Bye.